Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Roadmaster diode wiring kit on a 2016 Chevrolet Suburban. Now this is available in a few different configurations. Here we have our coiled cable. It's also available with a straight cable, as well as a hybrid cable, which will have a little bit of the coiled and a little bit of the straight. It's also available with no cable, as well as a 4-pole end. So you have plenty of different options available. Whichever one works best for your tow bar and what components you already have is going to be the one that you're going to want to pick. Now the main benefit of diode wiring is once it's installed, you're able to just plug in that umbilical to your RV, and it's going to mimic the light sequences, whether it be your running lights, your brake lights, or turn signals, to the towed vehicle. And so many times you've probably seen the magnetic lights that stick on the back of cars. That's one more component that you do have to set up and store, whereas your diode wiring, once it's installed, you just plug it in and you're ready to go. Now there's 5 main components when flat towing a vehicle that are going to be required, and the first one is going to be on the vehicle side, and that's going to be your base plate. And the base plate is going to attach to the frame of the vehicle, or at least a structural support to be able to have our arms, which will make the connection point to our tow bar. And our tow bar is going to be the second component, and that's going to be the connection point between the vehicle and the hitch on the RV. Now we also have our safety chain loops with our safety cables here, so in case of an accidental disconnect, we still have an attachment point to hold this all together. Now if that does fail, we do have a breakaway switch here for our braking system that will pull this pin and bring the vehicle to a stop. Now our braking system is also going to slow and stop the vehicle as we apply the brakes on the RV. We also have our diode wiring, and that's going to transmit our light signals from the RV via the 7-pole to our 6-pole, and that way you have lighting functions of running lights, brake lights, as well as our turn signals, keeping you safe and legal. Now the diodes install by splicing into the factory taillight wiring, and you're just going to use some spade connectors to run some wires from the front of the vehicle to the back and making those connections. And it's not terribly hard. Really, I think the hardest part is going to be running the wire from the front of the vehicle to the back. But once you have that done, splicing in is pretty easy. And I'm going to show you how to do that step by step. That way you can get your diode wiring installed on your Suburban. So now that we're in the process of doing our flat tow components, we have the fascia off, and I highly recommend doing all of your flat tow components while the fascia is off. It makes it a lot easier to get all your wires ran. And what I've done here is I've just gone ahead and taken our wire and made a nice extra loop, and that way I have extra wire to work with. You can always trim off a little bit extra, but if it's short, it makes it really difficult to make your attachment to your 6-pole. So kind of just looping it here on this front bumper support, I went ahead and started routing this back. Now my goal when running wires from the front to the back of a car is always to minimize the potential for punching it in suspension, burning it on exhaust, or honestly anything moving. So following factory wire loom generally kind of helps. This is a 4-wheel drive model, so I went ahead and just looped it up on the frame rail here. And depending on your braking system, this one's doing an Air Force One, but some of your other ones you're going to need to tie into diodes. So having an extra loom of wire is really, really helpful to tie into that. So you can see my wires I kind of poked over through here, kind of behind the fender liner. So I just followed this along the frame rail until I got to the end of our fuel tank. From our fuel tank, I just kind of went towards the center of the vehicle, went over the rear subframe here, and that put me over the spare tire where I can then split my wires to go to each side. So you'll see that I have my yellow and brown wires going over to my driver's side and my green wire going over to my passenger. Now you may be wondering, where's my white wire? Well, here's the excess white wire. And I grounded this further up, and I'll show you where I grounded it, but this gave me enough extra wire to create a jumper, as we're going to need to go from one side to the other. And this wiring kit, just being a long vehicle, you don't have a ton of extra here. So normally you can take your excess wire and jump it. That's not the case here, just because it is a long vehicle. So having this extra white wire makes it so you don't have to pick up any extra. A white wire, I just simply peeled it back, and then kind of on the frame rail here, really any place that you can find a nice factory ground. The more you find it towards the front of the vehicle means more wire to work with. I just went ahead and I used my self-tapping screw and the ring terminal included, and then I coated it with some black silicone just to kind of make sure that that doesn't corrode while being underneath the vehicle. Now back by our taillights, we're going to be gaining access to the plugs that go into it, so we're going to have to pull the taillight out. And if you've never done that on your Suburban, it's fairly easy here. There's just kind of a cap, a plastic one that's got some snaps in it. So to get behind it, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky, but a trim panel tool or a flathead screwdriver might help you pry this out. You can just kind of take your time working your way up. You should kind of find some resistance from those clips. So just, if you need to, put a little pressure right there where those clips are, work your way up, and then this should come out. Now this is going to reveal that we have two T15 Torx bits screws, so we'll go ahead and get those taken out. To get the taillight out, you're going to kind of just wiggle it back and forth as there's kind of some tabs that pop into it, but pulling it back towards the rear of the vehicle. Once you kind of get a gap, you can get your fingers on the outside of the taillight and just pull this back. You can see these are where they pop into place. Now we have our wiring all running in on this loom, and there's a metal clip here. I'm going to peel this clip off. You can just kind of pry on the edge. Now careful, they can shoot, so just keep track of it. But this is going to give us just a little bit more room to be able to tie into our wires. So just pry up on that tab there. And again, that's just going to make it a little bit easier for us. Now I've gone ahead and done the same on the other side. So both the taillights are off. And what I'm going to do is fish wire our wires up. So using just an airline tube that I have here, if you're doing a braking system, chances are you probably have some extra of this in your kit. But whatever works to be able to pull the wires up. So we'll just feed this down. And now we'll go ahead and grab our yellow and brown wire as well as our white extra wire that we have. And we're just going to tape this up to our fish wire. And then as we pull here, we should be able to get our wires pulled up nice and easy. So just pull out that as much slack as you can on that yellow and brown. Make sure that it's routed safely underneath the vehicle as well. And now we have our wires up, so we can start making our connections to our diode. So I've gone ahead and tested the wiring to determine which ones we need as far as our brake light, turn signal, and running light. And the running lights on this are the LED that kind of go around the entire thing. Determined that our running light is going to be this brown wire here. And then this lower green wire is going to be used for our brake and turn signal. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and make a cut on our green wire there, as well as our brown wire here. And I'm going to strip back both ends. Take our diode and take off our spade connectors here. And on our green wire, we can go ahead and just crimp these down. Now, these are very important to make sure that you have a good crimp on. You don't want this becoming loose over time. So after every crimp, I just suggest giving it a quick tug just to make sure that it's secured properly. We can go ahead and put the other spade connector here on the other side of the green. This is going to be our stop and turn, so we need to go ahead, the excess wire that I have here, I'm just going to cut, and we need our yellow wire. So we can go ahead and strip back that. And we can also put a blue spade connector on this end as well. And if you do need to gain a little bit more access to your wires, you can go ahead and peel it out of this wire loom just to make it a little bit easier. But now that we have 3 spade connectors here, we're able to make our first connection. So pretty easy. You have in and out. Our out will face towards the taillight, and that's going to get plugged in here. And then this top one, you can go either way, but plug in the green to one side. Just make sure it slides directly in that spade terminal there. And then our yellow will go here. For our brown wire, it's going to be pretty similar, but we're going to incorporate our jumper. So we're going to be using our yellow spade terminal, but for now we can go ahead, take our blue on the outside and put it near the plug here. Brown wire that runs to our bulb there for our running light, we'll go ahead and put a blue spade connector. And on the other end, we can go ahead and put the other blue spade connector. And then our yellow spade connector is going to attach to our white and our brown. So I'm going to get my end of my white wire that we pulled up previous. And then with our brown, we'll go ahead and strip both ends back and get our yellow spade connector on there. So grab your other diode, put your out towards the bulb there. Plug your other brown wire into one of the sides here. And then our jumper wire here we'll just plug in. Now these can get a little bit tight here, so just kind of be careful not to damage the male portion there. But that's going to pretty much do one side here. Now that white wire again, I'm going to run up and pull my green wire up with that on my passenger side. But for here, we want to make sure that we don't have too much stress here on the wires. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of tape all this up, get it kind of nice and clean. Taping these edges here will keep a little bit of stress off those wires. Now over on our passenger side, it's going to be pretty similar here. We tied in that brown wire again. Our white wire, which we jumpered over, is going to go into the running light diode here. And then our green wire, pretty easy. We ran our green wire that we pulled up and made this attachment. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all buttoned up, kind of tape it all down, and then we can get our taillights back in. Now I've gone ahead and got the rest of our flat toe components set up, and our fascia is mounted back up. Now I've mounted my bracket for our 6-pole right here on the license plate bracket. Now there are some rivets to get this out, so this makes for a pretty decent mounting spot. It seems pretty solid, and I just ran some hardware up and bolted that down. Now as far as tying into your 6-pole, it's fairly easy. First, we're going to take our wire and take the boot that's on the back of your 6-pole and just slide this back for now. Hopefully you left yourself some extra length here to make it a little bit easier. And even if you do have excess, you can trim some off, but make sure you have enough to attach it. You can always push that wiring back in when you're done. Now we'll just go ahead and separate the wires by kind of cutting in between them, and we'll just peel these back. And we're just going to strip back a little bit of the wire ends here, and this is how we're going to be able to put them in the connectors of the 6-pole. So just a length about that long should be fine. And our 6-pole, you'll see on the back here, has small little Phillips, and when we back this out, it creates a gap for us to feed our wire in, and this is how we crimp them down. Now, don't back them out all the way. They can be tricky if they fall out to find and get back in place. And there's going to be some embossed letters here that's going to denote where you're going to hook it up. Also, we're doing our 4-pole here, but if you have a charge line, this is a great time to be hooking that up here. So we're just doing our 4 wires, but you may have 5. So I'm going to go ahead and get them put into place, and then I'll walk you through where they all go. Starting at our 12 o'clock position here, you'll see that it's marked TM. That's going to be our tail marker. So that's going to be our running light, which is our brown wire. And going over to GD is going to be our ground, which is white. Our left turn is going to be yellow. Our right turn is going to be green. Now if you have a charge line, your 12-volt power supply is going to be that longer center stud, so you're going to want to wire that up into that. Now before we put our boot into place, I'm going to go ahead and just take some dielectric grease and just coat this all. As it lives on the front of the vehicle, it's kind of exposed to some water and just buildup of, you know, road grime and whatnot. So this kind of allows for a little bit of protection against that, and just going to prolong the life of our plug. So you can coat this pretty heavy. And then we're going to go ahead and take our boot, slide this over. And if you want to, with this excess wire, you can take some wire loom and tuck this in before taping this all up. So I'll go ahead and get that run real quick. And just for a little, again, added protection here, I'm just going to take some electrical tape and just wrap this all up just to kind of seal it. That way we don't get any moisture in there. With our included hardware, we're going to go ahead and get this mounted up to our bracket. All that's left to do is to run through the light sequences and make sure that they're working properly. Now I'll be using a test box, which is just going to simulate the 7-pole on our RV. So to test yours, you can hook your umbilical that's included with the diodes up to your RV, run through those light sequences on the RV, have someone check the lights on the back of your vehicle. So we'll run through the light sequence starting with our running lights. Next we'll do our left turn signal, then our right turn signal, and then finally our brakes. And that was a look and installation of the Roadmaster diode wiring kit on a 2016 Chevrolet Suburban.